The silence had lasted for centuries. 3,000 years. It wasn't just an absence of sound. It was the absence of humanity's voice in the great Galactic Council. For eons, Earth had been forgotten, abandoned, its people left in the dust of cosmic politics. The ancient civilizations had once reached out to the stars, promising a future of unity, exploration, and progress. But somewhere along the way, humanity had been betrayed. The Galactic Council, a collective of powerful civilizations, had deemed Earth insignificant, a mere footnote in the vastness of the universe. The people of Earth, once fierce explorers, were reduced to nothing more than a distant memory, their history barely a whisper in the corridors of intergalactic space. The people of Earth had watched, helpless, as the rest of the galaxy flourished, their worlds growing in strength, power, and influence. The mighty fleets of alien races cruised through the stars, while humanity remained locked in a world of their own, struggling against the forces that had long since abandoned them. But all that changed in an instant. A single spark ignited a fire that would burn through the galaxy, shaking the very foundations of the galactic order. It began with a signal in ancient transmission, buried deep within the archives of the Earth's last remaining survivors. It was a relic, something from long ago. But its message was clear. Humanity had evolved. What had once been a fractured, divided species had now united, transformed by centuries of isolation and struggle. They had adapted, learned, and most importantly, they had survived. And now, they were ready to take back what was theirs. The Galactic Council had no idea what they were in for. The leaders of the galaxy, safe within their fortified citadels, believed humanity had been pacified, their power crushed beneath the weight of time. But what they didn't know was that Earth had been biding its time, gathering strength in the shadows. Every year, every decade, the people of Earth had watched, waiting for the right moment. And that moment had finally come. The first sign was subtle, almost imperceptible, a series of unremarkable events occurring across the galaxy. Strange signals, interference in communications, and unexplained power surges that sent ripples through the galaxy's carefully structured systems. But the Council was too busy with their own agendas, too blinded by their arrogance to see the danger lurking on the horizon. They were about to learn the hard way that humanity was no longer the weak, fractured species they had once known. As the signal spread, it reached the farthest corners of the galaxy, to those who had once been humanity's allies and enemies alike. It wasn't just a call for help. It was a declaration of war. The human race was back, and they were far stronger than anyone had ever anticipated. The leaders of the Galactic Council convened in a hidden chamber, the most powerful beings in the galaxy sitting around a massive table, discussing the growing threat. Their expressions were unreadable, their minds calculating every possible outcome, every risk, every move humanity might make. They knew that Earth had been quiet for far too long, but they had never anticipated this kind of retaliation. The technology, the strategy, the sheer force of will, the Council had underestimated humanity's capacity for survival. Now, the question was simple. Could they stop it? In the heart of Earth, a small group of the brightest minds and fiercest warriors had come together, forming an alliance unlike any other. They had trained, fought, and lived in the harshest conditions, preparing for this moment. It was a time of reckoning. They knew that the fight ahead wouldn't be easy. It wasn't just about defeating the Council. It was about reclaiming their place in the universe. They had been silent for too long, but now they would make their voices heard. The tension in the air was thick, almost tangible. Humanity's revenge wasn't just about revenge. It was about survival, about proving that they had always belonged among the stars. But as the human forces prepared for their inevitable confrontation, they knew that there was no turning back. This was a battle for the soul of humanity, and every decision would have consequences far beyond what anyone could imagine. The first strike came without warning. A wave of energy, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, swept through the Council's most secure systems. The attack was swift, precise, and devastating. Council's leaders scrambled, trying to regain control, but the humans were already one step ahead. They had learned, adapted, and evolved in ways the galaxy could not comprehend. They had studied their enemies, understood their weaknesses, and now they were using that knowledge to their advantage. The attack was just the beginning. It wasn't enough to simply strike. Humanity wanted to send a message. They wanted the galaxy to remember who they were, what they had overcome. The people of Earth weren't just fighting for their survival. They were fighting for their dignity, their legacy. They had been silenced for too long, and now they were speaking with the power of 1,000 voices. In the distant reaches of the galaxy, the Council's fleet gathered, preparing for an all-out war. The greatest military force ever assembled, made up of thousands of alien species, now faced the full fury of a humanity that had been pushed to the brink. The battle would be fierce, the stakes unimaginable. But in the end, one thing was certain: humanity was not going to lose. Not again. The war was just beginning, and the outcome was uncertain. Would humanity succeed in reclaiming their place in the galaxy, or would the Council crush them once and for all? There was only one way to find out. As the tension mounted, the final message from Earth was broadcast to the galaxy, clear, unambiguous, and filled with the promise of a reckoning. We are humanity, and we will not be silenced again. The final words hung in the air, echoing through the cosmos, a warning to all who had dared to forget humanity's strength. But the true battle was only just beginning, and as the first ships from Earth prepared to strike, the galaxy watched with bated breath. Would the humans succeed, or would they fall beneath the weight of an empire that had once ignored them? And in the depths of space, something stirred, an ancient force, a forgotten enemy, watching from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to make their move. What had been silent for thousands of years was now alive, and the consequences of their awakening could change everything. The fate of the galaxy now hung in the balance. The fleet from Earth moved with a sense of purpose that sent chills down the spines of those who had watched the rise of the Galactic Council. These were no longer the scattered, disorganized humans of the past. They had evolved both in body and in mind. Years of isolation had forged them into something far beyond the species that had once been discarded by the galactic elite. Their ships, once rudimentary, now gleamed with alien technology, as though they had tapped into the very essence of the cosmos itself. These ships were built for one thing: to send a message and to wage war if necessary. The humans, however, were not only driven by revenge. They had a deeper motive, a need to remind the galaxy of the one undeniable truth: Earth was not a world to be forgotten. And they weren't the only ones watching. Those who had once helped humanity, the ones who had seen the potential in Earth's people, had started to stir as well. Some, far beyond the reach of the Galactic Council, remembered the promises they had made to Earth's ancestors. They had hidden themselves away, retreating into the far corners of space, unwilling to face the consequences of the Council's decisions. But Earth's awakening was stirring something in them. Would they emerge from the shadows? Or would they remain hidden, too afraid to act? Back on Earth, the leaders of this new human alliance stood in stark contrast to those who had once ruled in the old world. Gone were the corrupt governments and fractured systems. In their place stood a council of military commanders, scientists, and strategists, all working together with one unified goal: to ensure humanity's place in the stars. But they were not without conflict. Each leader carried the weight of the past, of the mistakes that had led to humanity's fall from grace. Some of them had lost family members to the wars fought before Earth had been abandoned. Others had watched as their world teetered on the brink of destruction, knowing that they had been powerless to stop it. Among them was a former military commander who had seen firsthand the devastation that followed humanity's initial attempts at space exploration. His ships, once part of the Galactic Council's fleet, had been scattered and lost during a failed mission decades ago. Since then, he had become one of Earth's most valuable assets. His knowledge of the Council's military strategies was unmatched, but his past haunted him. He knew how dangerous the Council could be, how far they would go to maintain their dominance. He understood the cost of underestimating them. There was also a scientist, once a researcher in the Council's most prestigious laboratories, who had defected from the Council years ago. She had uncovered something so profound that she knew it could change the entire course of history. She had worked in the shadow of the Council's grand designs, silently watching as they used Earth's resources and humanity's inventions to fuel their empire. Her work now, alongside the military leaders, was to integrate Earth's technology with that of their enemies. She had seen the fear in their eyes when the first signs of humanity's resurgence appeared on the horizon. But even with all their knowledge, all their power, there was still a deep uncertainty. Could they win? Could humanity truly rise up against an empire so vast, so well-established? There were no guarantees. The Galactic Council, after all, was not a single entity. It was a coalition of countless species, each with their own agendas, their own interests. The Council's structure was built on lies, deceit, and power plays. But it was also built on one undeniable truth: strength. And that was something humanity had learned to wield. The initial wave of Earth's fleet hit the outermost defenses of the Council's domain, their ships moving swiftly, with calculated precision. The initial attacks were small, seemingly inconsequential: a few tactical strikes on supply lines, some minor disruptions in communication. But these were no random acts. Each strike was a calculated move in a larger plan, one that Earth's commanders had spent years devising. They were not simply striking at the Council's military might. They were attacking its foundation, chipping away at the very infrastructure that kept it in power. The first major battle came when Earth's ships, moving under the cover of darkness, engaged a flotilla of Council ships in the shadow of a dead star. This would be no ordinary battle. The humans had learned to fight in ways that their enemies had never anticipated. The Council, having always seen Earth as a primitive, inferior race, was caught off guard by the ferocity of their attackers. The humans' tactics were unpredictable, almost chaotic, something the Council was unprepared for. What they didn't realize was that humanity had been surviving in the chaos for centuries. They had learned to adapt to the unknown, to turn the tide when it seemed impossible. But as the battle raged on, something even darker began to unfold. The Council's forces had begun to fight back with unprecedented force. They had never truly believed humanity could threaten them, but they now found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. And in the midst of the battle, strange anomalies began to appear: spatial distortions, unexplained energy surges that seemed to come from nowhere, tearing through the fabric of space itself. It was as if something was watching, something more ancient and powerful than the Council had ever anticipated. But no one knew what it was. The humans, though, were not deterred. They pressed forward, their fleet moving with relentless precision, unwilling to stop until their message had been sent. They had only one objective: to make the Council understand that their silence had been heard, and that humanity's time had come. But deep within the Council, there was a growing unease. Their leaders, who had once believed their empire was invincible, now found themselves facing an uprising they could not control. And just when they thought they had regained control of the situation, the unexpected happened. A signal, ancient, mysterious, was detected. It was not from Earth. It was coming from somewhere far beyond their reach, deep within the uncharted regions of space. The Council's highest officials gathered in a secret meeting, their faces grim. This was not a simple rebellion they were dealing with. Something far more dangerous was coming. And as the human forces continued their assault, the true threat was revealed: a force that had been silent for millennia, now awakening in response to humanity's challenge. What had been lost in the annals of history was now ready to reclaim its place. And no one, not even the mighty Galactic Council, was prepared for what would come next. The battle for the galaxy had only just begun. The questions were mounting. Who were the true enemies? Was humanity the catalyst for a war that would consume them all? Or was there something far more ancient, far more powerful, lying dormant in the deep reaches of space? The answers, it seemed, were still out there, waiting to be discovered. And with each passing day, the stakes grew higher. The galaxy was about to face a reckoning, and no one could predict what would happen next. The galaxy was bracing itself for something far worse than anyone had anticipated. As Earth's forces advanced deeper into the heart of the Galactic Council's domain, the atmosphere grew thick with uncertainty. Each victory came at a cost, and each moment of triumph seemed to unravel the fabric of the galaxy even further. Humanity's resurgence had already turned the tide of a war that no one had expected. But now, with the galaxy on the edge of total destruction, there was a new force at play, one that no one could fully comprehend. The Council's response was swift and brutal, yet each countermeasure only seemed to fuel humanity's resolve. Earth's forces were relentless. Led by those who had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment, they struck quickly and decisively, their tactics unpredictable. The humans fought with a desperation that came from years of being forgotten, of being silenced. And yet, they weren't fighting just for survival. They were fighting for something more. Every commander on Earth knew this war was their last chance, their only opportunity to reclaim what had been taken from them. But even as they advanced, a shadow loomed: something more than the Council itself. The ancient signal, the one that had first alerted the Council to humanity's awakening, had grown stronger. It was coming from the uncharted depths of space, from a place that no one dared venture. The Council had already sent their best fleets to investigate, but they hadn't returned. Instead, they sent strange messages, filled with static reports of strange, unexplainable phenomena. Whispers of an entity, a presence, something that defied everything the Council had believed. A force ancient and powerful, that seemed to be linked to humanity in ways no one could understand. The fleet from Earth, now poised at the edge of the Council's territory, felt the presence too. It was subtle at first, a vibration in the fabric of space, a distortion that rippled through the air. It wasn't like anything they had encountered. Even the most advanced technology couldn't explain it. And as Earth's forces pushed forward, they began to notice its strange phenomena occurring in their path, as if the universe itself was warping around them. The ships began to flicker in and out of phase, their weapons systems malfunctioning, the stars themselves seeming to shift unnaturally. It was a warning they could no longer ignore. The humans pressed on, but with each passing day, it became harder to deny that something far more dangerous was out there. The transmissions they had been receiving, now decrypted, told a tale that chilled the blood of every leader in Earth's command. It wasn't just the Council they had to face. There was something else, something far older, that had been watching them all this time. And now, as the war between Earth and the Council intensified, this ancient force was awakening. There were those who feared it. Rumors of an ancient race that had once ruled the galaxy, a race that had long since vanished, leaving only their power behind, circulated among Earth's commanders. Some whispered that this force was what had caused the Council to turn its back on Earth in the first place, an entity so powerful that it had wiped out entire civilizations in its wake. Some believed it was a force of nature itself, one that existed beyond the physical realm. Others feared that it was something more sinister, something that had lain dormant for centuries, only to be disturbed by humanity's actions. For the first time, the commanders of Earth's fleet began to question everything they had believed. Were they prepared to face this new enemy? Was the battle they had been waging for so long the right one? Or had they simply awakened a threat that could destroy them all? The tension grew unbearable. As Earth's ships made their final push toward the Council's core systems, they detected another fleet in the distance, one that wasn't from the Council. The fleet was silent, its presence almost ghostly, like a shadow stretching across the cosmos. No one knew where it had come from, or what its intentions were. But one thing was certain, it wasn't friendly. The strange energy signatures from their ships mirrored the anomalies Earth's fleet had been encountering. And as they neared the Council's capital, the massive fleet suddenly disappeared from the sensors, leaving only silence in its wake. A strange unease began to settle over the human commanders. They knew they were about to face something more terrifying than the Galactic Council itself. They had expected a battle, yes. But what if this wasn't just a war for survival? What if this was a war for the very soul of the galaxy? The final confrontation was at hand. Earth's forces were closing in, their ships bristling with weaponry, prepared for the clash of a lifetime. The Council's defenses were strong, but they were fractured, shaken by the rising tide of humanity's return. Yet, even as Earth's fleet approached the Council's capital, they knew they were walking into something far more dangerous. The strange energy fields grew stronger, warping the fabric of space around them, and the fleet began to experience systems failures. Once again, communications cut off, propulsion flickered, and even their weapons began to malfunction. It was then that they realized the truth. The strange presence wasn't a fleet at all. It was something far more terrifying, an ancient consciousness, one that had existed long before the Galactic Council had even formed. And now, this force was waking up, drawing nearer with every passing moment. Earth's fleet had unknowingly walked into its domain. In the distance, a massive, pulsating structure appeared an ancient temple, floating in the void, built from materials that defied explanation. Its surface was covered in symbols that seemed to glow with an eerie light, and as Earth's ships drew closer, the presence intensified, surrounding them with a force that felt almost physical. It was as if the very fabric of space was bending to its will, pulling the fleet in like moths to a flame. The humans knew they had no choice but to face whatever this was. There was no retreat, no going back. They had come too far. But as their ships neared the ancient structure, a voice soft and distant echoed through their minds, a warning. "You have awoken us." The words were clear, yet incomprehensible. They were not spoken aloud, but resonated in the very consciousness of every human aboard the fleet. The force, whatever it was, had made itself known. The question now was simple. Could humanity survive the wrath of an entity that had slumbered for eons, waiting for its moment to return? The answer was still out there, hidden in the vastness of space just beyond their reach. And as Earth's fleet closed in, the universe itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash that would reshape everything. The voice echoed through the minds of Earth's fleet, a soft yet powerful presence that seemed to transcend space itself. "You have awoken us." The words reverberated, their meaning sinking in with the weight of something both ancient and terrifying. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The human commanders exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what to do next. They had prepared for battle against the Galactic Council, but nothing, not even their worst fears, had prepared them for this. The energy signature that surrounded them grew exponentially stronger, pulsing like a heartbeat, reverberating through the very core of their ships. It was as though the galaxy itself had taken a breath, and the collective consciousness of humanity stood at the precipice of an unknown abyss. The force, this ancient presence, was not something they could simply fight. It wasn't a fleet to be destroyed, nor a weapon to be countered. It was something far older, far more powerful than anything they had ever encountered. And it wasn't just a force, it was a mind, a sentience, and it had been watching. Then, something unimaginable happened. The ancient structure that had appeared in the distance, the pulsating temple, began to shift. The once stationary monolith now moved, its edges rippling like liquid metal, its surface glowing with a fierce light that seemed to distort the very stars around it. It wasn't merely a temple, it was alive. The energy that radiated from it was both mesmerizing and terrifying. And as it began to move toward Earth's fleet, an unsettling realization swept through the crew. They weren't just facing a cosmic entity. They were facing an awakening civilization. The human commanders scrambled to make sense of the growing chaos. Reports flooded in, confirming what they had all feared. The strange anomalies that had been plaguing their fleet were not just technical malfunctions. They were manifestations of something far more complex, something that was actively controlling the environment around them. The stars were flickering in and out of alignment. Time seemed to stretch and warp unnaturally, and the space surrounding their ships was bending as if reality itself was being torn apart. It was no longer just the Galactic Council they had to worry about. This ancient race, this entity, was far more dangerous than anything they could have anticipated. The crew was caught between two forces now. On one side, they had the Council's relentless military might, closing in with their advanced fleets, determined to stamp out the threat that Earth's resurgence had become. On the other side, they faced an alien presence so vast, so powerful, that it made the Council seem insignificant in comparison. The stakes had escalated beyond anyone's control. The war for Earth's survival had now become a fight for the future of the galaxy itself. Just as the human fleet prepared to engage, another shocking twist unfolded. As if on cue, a massive rift appeared in space, its edges glowing with an unnatural light. It wasn't a black hole, but it wasn't a wormhole either. It was something in between, something that tore through the very fabric of space-time. The human commanders watched in horror as dozens of ships, once believed to be lost in deep space, began emerging from the rift. These were ships that had been missing for centuries, ships from Earth's past, ships that had been presumed destroyed in the earliest days of humanity's space exploration. But they weren't empty. As the ships materialized, the screens flickered to life, revealing their crew's human faces, some aged, some frozen in time. The humans aboard these ships had been stranded long ago, cut off from Earth and left to drift in the void. Their bodies were preserved, their minds trapped in stasis, but now they were back. And they were not alone. The ships carried strange alien technology that, until now, had only been rumored to exist. These were the ships of humanity's lost pioneers, the explorers who had ventured too far into the unknown and paid the price for it. As the fleet of lost ships began to materialize, a new realization began to take shape. The rift that had opened wasn't just a passage through space, it was a doorway. And it wasn't just bringing Earth's past back to life. It was bringing something else through. The lost ships weren't alone. The rift had connected to a far-off, unknown corner of the galaxy, one that had been sealed off for eons. And whatever had been sealed behind that rift was now spilling into the galaxy. The presence that had been lurking in the temple began to grow stronger, more urgent. The eerie voice echoed again, louder this time, resonating in every mind aboard Earth's fleet. The door is open. The time has come. And with that, the energy surrounding the fleet shifted, a burst of force that shook every ship to its core. It wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a call to action. A call to prepare for something much larger than anything humanity could have anticipated. The human commanders could feel the pressure mounting. They had no choice now but to act, but the unknown forces that were converging on them were beyond comprehension. With the rift still pulsating in space, the ships from Earth's past closing in, and the Council's fleet positioning for a final strike, the human leaders knew they had only one option. They had to take control of the rift. It was the only way to prevent the overwhelming forces threatening their world from breaking free into the galaxy. But as they made their move, something even more terrifying happened. The rift began to change. The presence, the mind that had been speaking to them was now manifesting itself. Not just in their minds, but in the physical world. The energy from the rift reached out like tendrils of light, stretching toward Earth's fleet, wrapping itself around their ships as though attempting to control them. The technology on Earth's ships, the very systems they relied on, began to glitch. Their weapon systems faltered, their engines sputtered. The more they tried to fight back, the more they realized the rift was alive and it was trying to claim them. In that moment, the human fleet faced an impossible choice. With the Council closing in from one direction, the ancient force from the rift pulling them in another, and the ships of humanity's lost pioneers caught between two worlds, Earth's forces were stuck in a paradox they couldn't escape. Every move they made seemed to draw them deeper into a cosmic web of manipulation and destruction. They couldn't go forward. They couldn't go back, and the clock was ticking down. The tension reached its breaking point. The human fleet, The Council's forces and the alien presence from the rift were all converging. And with the universe itself now warping around them, no one knew who would emerge victorious or if anyone would survive the storm that was about to consume them all. The question hung in the air like a storm cloud, dark and ominous. Would humanity be able to control the rift before the ancient force overwhelmed them? Or would the galaxy face an apocalypse, the likes of which no one had ever imagined? The crew was caught between two forces now. On one side, they had the Council's relentless military might, closing in with their advanced fleets, determined to stamp out the threat that Earth's resurgence had become. On the other side, they faced an alien presence so vast, so powerful, that it made the Council seem insignificant in comparison. The stakes had escalated beyond anyone's control. The war for Earth's survival had now become a fight for the future of the galaxy itself. Just as the human fleet prepared to engage, another shocking twist unfolded. As if on cue, a massive rift appeared in space, its edges glowing with an unnatural light. It wasn't a black hole, but it wasn't a wormhole either. It was something in between something that tore through the very fabric of space-time. The human commanders watched in horror as dozens of ships, once believed to be lost in deep space, began emerging from the rift. These were ships that had been missing for centuries, ships from Earth's past, ships that had been presumed destroyed in the earliest days of humanity's space exploration. But they weren't empty. As the ships materialized, the screens flickered to life, revealing their crews' human faces, some aged, some frozen in time. The humans aboard these ships had been stranded long ago, cut off from Earth and left to drift in the void. Their bodies were preserved, their minds trapped in stasis, but now they were back, and they were not alone. The ships carried strange, alien technology that, until now, had only been rumored to exist. These were the ships of humanity's lost pioneers, the explorers who had ventured too far into the unknown and paid the price for it. As the fleet of lost ships began to materialize, a new realization began to take shape. The rift that had opened wasn't just a passage through space, it was a doorway. And it wasn't just bringing Earth's past back to life. It was bringing something else through. The lost ships weren't alone. The rift had connected to a far-off, unknown corner of the galaxy, one that had been sealed off for eons. And whatever had been sealed behind that rift was now spilling into the galaxy. The presence that had been lurking in the temple began to grow stronger, more urgent. The eerie voice echoed again, louder this time, resonating in every mind aboard Earth's fleet. The door is open. The time has come. And with that, the energy surrounding the fleet shifted, a burst of force that shook every ship to its core. It wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a call to action, a call to prepare for something much larger than anything humanity could have anticipated. The human commanders could feel the pressure mounting. They had no choice now but to act, but the unknown forces that were converging on them were beyond comprehension. With the rift still pulsating in space, the ships from Earth's past closing in, and the Council's fleet positioning for a final strike, the human leaders knew they had only one option. They had to take control of the rift. It was the only way to prevent the overwhelming forces threatening their world from breaking free into the galaxy. But as they made their move, something even more terrifying happened. The rift began to change. The presence, the mind that had been speaking to them was now manifesting itself. Not just in their minds, but in the physical world. The energy from the rift reached out like tendrils of light, stretching toward Earth's fleet, wrapping itself around their ships, as though attempting to control them. The technology on Earth's ships, the very systems they relied on, began to glitch. Their weapons systems faltered. Their engines sputtered. The more they tried to fight back, the more they realized the rift was alive and it was trying to claim them. In that moment, the human fleet faced an impossible choice. With the Council closing in from one direction, the ancient force from the rift pulling them in another, and the ships of humanity's lost pioneers caught between two worlds, Earth's forces were stuck in a paradox they couldn't escape. Every move they made seemed to draw them deeper into a cosmic web of manipulation and destruction. They couldn't go forward, they couldn't go back, and the clock was ticking down. The tension reached its breaking point. The human fleet, the Council's forces, and the alien presence from the rift were all converging. And with the universe itself now warping around them, no one knew who would emerge victorious, or if anyone would survive the storm that was about to consume them all. The question hung in the air like a storm cloud, dark and ominous. Would humanity be able to control the rift before the ancient force overwhelmed them? Or would the galaxy face an apocalypse, the likes of which no one had ever imagined? The tension in space was unbearable. Every ship in Earth's fleet seemed to vibrate with the oppressive energy emanating from the rift. The Council's forces, now in full pursuit, circled like vultures, their weapon systems primed for a strike. Humanity had reached a critical juncture. Time was slipping through their fingers, and the stakes had never been higher. With the rift pulsing like a living heart, and the lost ships of Earth's past closing in, there was no way to turn back. The fate of the galaxy rested on the next few moments. The commanders issued their orders, voices steady despite the chaos. "We have to breach the rift." Now, the message was clear. They needed to act fast, or the alien presence would fully manifest and overpower them all. The fleet concentrated all its firepower on the rift's boundary, their weapons unleashing a barrage of energy in an attempt to force the rift open wider. The ships of humanity's lost pioneers, their technology fused with alien designs, joined in, providing support with weapons that pulsed with strange power. It seemed as though the universe itself was fighting back. The rift crackled violently, its energy expanding in waves that shook space itself. The ship's systems continued to falter, and the once thriving human fleet began to lose control, drifting like puppets tangled in the strings of an invisible master. But the human will was strong. Desperation drove them to push forward, their engines firing up once again, their resolve unyielding. They couldn't afford to fail. Then, something unexpected happened. As the rift responded to the assault, the energy abruptly shifted. The rift no longer seemed like an uncontrollable force. It began to stabilize, its pulsations syncing with the rhythm of the human fleet. The presence that had been haunting their minds no longer spoke in fragmented whispers. It spoke directly, clearly, and for the first time, there was no malice. "You have proven your strength," the voice resonated, filling the minds of everyone aboard the fleet. "You have earned your place." The words were a paradox. After everything, after all the destruction, the fear, and the unknown, they had not been confronting an enemy. They had been facing a test. The ancient force, this entity beyond comprehension, had been watching humanity for eons, waiting for the moment to see if they were worthy of inheriting its power. It was not an invading force, but a gatekeeper, an entity that had protected the galaxy's secrets, ensuring only those with the strength, intelligence, and resolve to wield that power could pass. And humanity, with its grit and relentless pursuit of survival, had passed the test. The human fleet, battered and on the brink of collapse, was suddenly bathed in a warm golden light. The systems began to realign, and the strange energy that had been crippling their ships was now supporting them. The rift opened fully, revealing not an alien armada, but a vast cosmic library, a collection of knowledge stretching across time and space. It was a place beyond space-time, where civilizations that had long since disappeared had left their wisdom, their culture, and their technology. And humanity, now standing at the threshold, had earned the right to access it. But just as the atmosphere of triumph began to settle, another voice, darker and more ominous, rang out across the fleet. The Council had arrived. Their fleets, cornered by the rift, fired without warning, weapons charging with devastating intensity. The battle for control of the rift wasn't over yet. Humanity, now emboldened by the strange power they had inherited, fought back with renewed strength. The ancient presence seemed to pulse with them, guiding their movements, amplifying their attacks. The lost ships, now fully integrated with alien technology, became weapons of unimaginable power, their weapons firing in synchrony with Earth's forces. It was a war like no other war for control of the future. But then, the unexpected twist came. Just as the battle seemed to be tipping in humanity's favor, the rift began to close. The entity that had once tested them now seemed to be retreating, as though it had given all it could. The Council, desperate and with nothing left to lose, launched a final offensive, pouring everything they had into a devastating blow. The forces from Earth, weakened but determined, held their ground. And then, with a final surge of power, the rift closed completely. Silence descended over the battlefield. For a moment, everything was still, the light of distant stars the only thing left in the vast void of space. The fleets, human and council alike, were left in a strange truce, both sides exhausted, both sides having witnessed the power that had now been unlocked, but neither fully understanding its implications. The tension had not resolved. It had only shifted. In the aftermath of the battle, with the rift now sealed, Earth's commanders knew their victory wasn't complete. The power they unlocked was immense, yes, but it was also dangerous. There was no telling what new enemies might emerge to contest their newfound place in the galaxy. No one knew if the Council would accept this new order, or if they would rise again more determined than ever to reclaim what they had lost. The true cost of humanity's awakening remained to be seen. The entity, the force that had tested them, had granted them access to untold knowledge, but had it also bound them to a fate they couldn't control? The mystery of the rift and the entity was far from over. As the human fleet set course for the coordinates transmitted by the lost ships, tension hung in the air. There was no way of knowing what awaited them, what secrets would be revealed, or what challenges lay ahead. The message from the past had shattered the expectations of everyone aboard the ships, and yet it had also sparked a new sense of purpose. The universe had revealed its vastness, but it had also shown that humanity was not insignificant. They had been part of something much larger than they had ever imagined. Upon reaching the lost ships, a moment of profound discovery unfolded. The explorers, some appearing aged, others frozen in time, greeted Earth's fleet not with surprise, but with recognition. They had known this day would come. They had been waiting, preparing for this moment, and now they were ready to share everything they had learned. The truth was staggering. The lost explorers were not merely survivors of an ill-fated mission. They had been chosen to uncover a hidden truth about humanity's place in the universe. They had ventured into the unknown, only to discover that Earth had been a focal point of galactic history, a key to something far more significant than they could have ever imagined. And now, with the rift closed and the path ahead uncertain, humanity had been thrust into a new role. The fleet's commanders met with the leaders of the lost ships. Their conversations were long, deep, and full of revelations. The explorers spoke of the ancient beings that had once watched over the galaxy, the same beings that had sent the enigmatic message to Earth. They had been observing humanity for eons, waiting for the day when Earth would rise and take its place among the stars. And now, with the rift opened and the galactic balance shifting, humanity had to decide what its next steps would be. Would Earth become a leader in this new era, guiding the galaxy toward a brighter future? Or would the weight of the knowledge they had uncovered prove too much, leading to their downfall? The lost explorers had long known the answer. They had seen civilizations rise and fall, and they had learned from the mistakes of those who had come before them. The key was unity. The key was understanding their role, not just in the galaxy, but in the greater cosmic tapestry. The Council, meanwhile, wasn't finished. They may have retreated for now, but their hatred for Earth's resurgence had only grown stronger. As the human fleet regrouped, preparing for whatever was to come next, intelligence reports indicated that the Council was not idle. They were rebuilding, rethinking their strategy, and focusing their efforts on a singular goal, reclaiming control of the galaxy and ensuring that humanity would not have a place in this new order. The battle for the future of the galaxy was far from over. But this time, humanity wasn't standing alone. With the knowledge of the lost explorers, with the power they had unlocked from the rift, and with the support of those who had once been lost, Earth's fleet was prepared to face whatever came next. The closing of the rift didn't mark the end, it was the beginning of something much greater. Humanity had found its purpose in the cosmos. But as they ventured into the future, they knew there would be new challenges. The unknown had become a familiar companion, and their journey was only just beginning. In the final moments, as Earth's fleet prepared to leave the lost ships behind and set course for new horizons, a final transmission crackled through the comms. It was the same voice from Earth's past, but this time the message was different. There was a note of finality in it, a warning, perhaps, or a promise. "The galaxy is vast," the voice said, "and you have just begun to scratch the surface." The fleet sailed into the unknown, the stars stretching out before them like a vast ocean of possibilities. The galaxy had opened its doors to humanity, and now it was time to see what lay beyond. The past was behind them, but the future, unwritten and full of infinite potential, was waiting. And so, with a sense of both triumph and trepidation, humanity moved forward, knowing that their place in the universe had forever changed. The adventure had only just begun,